Virgin forced to marry an arrogant CIO, but after one night, everything changed. Part 2. Day 8 in Santorini. Kimberly woke wrapped around Richard like a vine, her cheek pressed against his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath her ear. The pillow wall had been abandoned completely days ago. Now they just reached for each other in sleep, bodies seeking warmth and comfort without conscious thought. She felt him wake, the subtle shift in his breathing, the way his hand moved to trace patterns on her shoulder blade. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Morning." She tilted her head to look at him. His hair was a mess. There were pillow creases on his cheek, and he looked more beautiful than any billionaire had a right to look. "What time is it?" "Too early to care." He pulled her closer. "I stay. I'm not going anywhere." "Good." They lay there in comfortable silence, watching the sunlight paint patterns on the ceiling. Outside, the sea was already glittering, and somewhere in the village, church bells were ringing. "Can I ask you something?" Kimberly said quietly. "Anything. Why were you really alone? Before all this?" She propped herself up on her elbow to see his face. "You're successful, attractive, intelligent. You could have had anyone. So why the loneliness?" Richard was quiet for a long moment, his jaw tightening in that way that meant he was deciding how much to share. Then something in his expression softened. "Because everyone wanted Richard Ashford, the billionaire," he said finally. "No one wanted just Richard." "Tell me about just Richard." He took a breath, and she could see him gathering courage. "Oh, just Richard grew up the only child of parents who treated him like an investment portfolio. I went to the best schools, got the best grades, made the right connections, all so I could take over the family business. Emotions were weaknesses. Vulnerability was failure. Love was impractical." Kimberly's chest tightened. "My father died when I was 23. Heart attack in his office. He was working on a merger." Richard's laugh was bitter. Even at his funeral, people only talked about the company. What would happen to Ashford Industries? Whether I was ready to lead. No one asked if I was okay. No one cared that I'd lost my father. "Richard, my mother remarried 6 months later. Some tech executive from Seattle. They sent a Christmas card every year." He met her eyes. "I built an empire because it's what I was supposed to do. I became exactly what they wanted me to be. And then I woke up at 32, sitting in a penthouse I barely lived in, and realized I didn't have a single person who actually knew me." "Not really." Kimberly touched his face, her thumb tracing his cheekbone. "I want to know you." "You already do, more than anyone ever has." "Then tell me more. Tell me everything." So he did. He told her about the pressure of taking over at 23, of board members 3 times his age questioning every decision, about the first deal he nearly lost because he was too proud to ask for help, about learning to be ruthless because kindness was seen as weakness. He told her about Daniel, who'd been his college roommate and the only person who still called him on his bullshit, about the charity work he did quietly, anonymously, because he didn't want it used for PR, about how he'd learned to play piano as a child but stopped when his father called it a waste of time. "Do you still play?" Kimberly asked. "No, I don't even own a piano." "Would you want to?" Richard looked surprised by the question. "I don't know. Maybe. We should get you one. For the penthouse. That's a terrible use of space. That's what makes it perfect. Something impractical. Something just for you." She kissed his shoulder. "Something that has nothing to do with business or image or what anyone else thinks." He stared at her like she just offered him the world. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Make me want things I thought I'd given up on." "Because you deserve to want things, Richard. You deserve to be more than your company." His arms tightened around her, and she felt him bury his face in her hair. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the sun climbed higher and the village came alive with morning sounds. Finally, Richard pulled back. Your turn. My turn for what? To tell me something real, something vulnerable. His gray eyes were serious. I want to know you too, Kimberly. All of you. She took a shaky breath, realizing he was right. He'd stripped himself bare, and she was still half hiding. Okay, she said, but fair warning, it's messy. I like messy. Kimberly sat up, pulling the sheet around herself, needing a little distance for this. I told you I was lonely, but I didn't tell you why. Richard waited, patient. I had someone 3 years ago. His name was Marcus. We dated for 2 years, and I thought he was it, you know, the person I'd spend my life with. She twisted the sheet between her fingers. He proposed on my birthday. Big romantic gesture, restaurant full of people. I said yes. What happened? I found out 6 months later that he'd been cheating on me with my coworker. Her laugh was sharp. Apparently, it had been going on for over a year. Everyone knew except me. I was the idiot fiancé who couldn't see what was right in front of her. Richard's expression darkened. That's not... I called off the wedding, lost my job because working with her became impossible, spent a year basically hiding from the world, convinced I'd never trust anyone again. She looked up at him, and then my dad's company collapsed, and I got forced into marrying a stranger, and I thought, this is what I deserve, a loveless arrangement, because clearly, I'm terrible at recognizing real love anyway. Kimberly, Richard reached for her hand. That guy was an idiot. He was a cheater. That too, but mostly an idiot because he had you. Smart, beautiful, infuriating you, and he threw it away. Richard pulled her back into his arms. His loss is my gain. That's a terrible thing to say, but true. He tilted her chin up. And for the record, you're not terrible at recognizing real love. You were just looking in the wrong places. And now? Now you're looking at me, which is either the best decision you've ever made or the worst. Jury's still out. Kimberly smiled despite the tears threatening to spill. I'm leaning toward best. Yeah? Yeah. She kissed him softly. You're nothing like him. Nothing like anyone I've ever known. Is that good or bad? It's terrifying, but good. Definitely good. Richard wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. We're quite a pair, aren't we? Two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole together. Maybe we're not broken. Maybe we were just waiting for the right person to see us clearly. God, you're going to make me fall completely in love with you, aren't you? Kimberly's breath caught. Would that be so terrible? It would be the best and scariest thing that's ever happened to me. He kissed her forehead. But I think I'm already halfway there. Just halfway? Okay, fine, 3/4. Maybe 80%. Richard Ashford, always with the precise calculations. It's what I do best. Wrong. Kimberly pushed him back onto the bed and kissed him deeply. This is what you do best. That afternoon, they rented bikes and rode to a tiny beach on the other side of the island. It was nearly deserted, just black sand, blue water, and a small taverna that looked like it might collapse if you breathe on it too hard. Perfect. They swam until their fingers pruned, then lay on the sand, salt-sticky and sun-drunk. Tell me something you've never told anyone, Kimberly said, trailing her fingers through the warm sand. Richard turned his head to look at her. I'm scared of dogs. What? Big dogs, specifically. Got bit when I was 7. Had to get 12 stitches. He showed her a faint scar on his calf. Never told anyone because it seemed ridiculous for a CEO to be scared of golden retrievers. Kimberly bit back a smile. That's actually kind of adorable. It's embarrassing. It's human. She rolled onto her side to face him. Okay, my turn.
If you're enjoying the story so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me keep bringing you more amazing love stories. All right, back to the story.
I can't whistle. Everyone can whistle. Not me. I've tried my whole life. Nothing, just air. Show me. She pursed her lips and blew. Just air, as promised. Richard laughed, a real full-bodied laugh that made her chest warm. That's pathetic. Rude. But endearing. He reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. What else? I'm terrified of being ordinary, of living a small, safe life and dying without ever doing anything that mattered. The confession came out quieter than she'd intended, more raw. Richard sat up, pulling her with him. Kimberly, you could never be ordinary. You're the least ordinary person I've ever met. You barely know me. I know enough. And I know you're brilliant and brave and so goddamn stubborn that you once argued with me for 20 minutes about the proper way to fold towels. There is a proper way. The edges should line up. See? Extraordinary. He cupped her face. You walked into a marriage you didn't want and somehow made it into something beautiful. You saw past my money and my reputation and saw me. You make me want to be better. How is any of that ordinary? Kimberly's eyes stung. Stop making me cry on this nice beach. Stop saying ridiculous things and I will. She kissed him instead of answering, tasting salt and sunshine and something that felt dangerously close to forever. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Richard said, I need to tell you something. Okay, I'm falling in love with you. He said it simply, honestly, like he was commenting on the weather. Maybe I already have. I don't know. I've never done this before. But whatever this is, this feeling when I wake up next to you, when you laugh at my terrible jokes, when you look at me like I'm more than my bank account, I don't want it to end. Kimberly's heart felt too big for her chest. Richard, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. He took her hand. When we go back to New York, when this honeymoon ends and real life starts again, I don't want this to be fake anymore. I want it to be real. I want us to be real. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to actually try, to be married, to build something together that's not about business or deals or saving anyone's company. He kissed her knuckles. I'm saying I choose you, not because I have to, and because I want to. Kimberly felt tears spill down her cheeks, but she was smiling. I choose you too. Yeah? Yeah. She climbed into his lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. I'm falling in love with you too. Have been for a while, I think. Maybe since you unbuttoned my dress on our wedding night and looked at me like I was something precious instead of a transaction. You are precious. So are you. They kissed again, deeper this time, full of promise and hope and the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone see you completely. When they finally broke apart, the sun was setting, painting the sky in impossible colors. We should probably head back, Richard said, making no move to let her go. Probably. It's getting dark. It is. Neither of them moved. Kimberly. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For giving me a chance. For seeing past the asshole billionaire to whatever's underneath. You're not an asshole. I was when we met. A little bit, she admitted. But you grew on me. Like a fungus? Like a very expensive, occasionally infuriating, surprisingly sweet fungus. Richard laughed, and the sound echoed across the empty beach. I love you. I love you too. They stayed on that beach until the stars came out, holding each other, talking quietly, letting themselves believe that maybe, just maybe, this crazy arranged marriage could become something real, something lasting, something like love. Day 12. 4 days left in paradise. Kimberly woke alone. The bed beside her was cold, the indentation of Richard's body the only evidence he'd been there at all. She sat up disoriented, reaching for her phone on the nightstand. Through the open door to the terrace, she could see him. He was on his phone, pacing, his voice low but tense. Even from here, she could read the rigid line of his shoulders, the way his free hand kept raking through his hair. Something was wrong. She pulled on one of his shirts and patted outside. He turned at the sound, and the look on his face made her stomach drop. "I have to go," he said into the phone. "We'll discuss this when I'm back in New York." He ended the call without waiting for a response. "What happened?" Kimberly asked. Richard set his phone down with deliberate care, like he didn't trust himself not to throw it off the terrace. "The board called an emergency meeting." "About what?" "About us." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Apparently someone leaked photos of us here. Not the ones they were supposed to leak. The carefully staged, PR-approved ones. Real ones. Us swimming, kissing on the beach, looking too happy." Kimberly's chest tightened. "I don't understand. Isn't that the point? To look happy?" "To look believably happy. Not," he gestured helplessly, "not like this. Not real." "What does that mean?" "It means the board thinks we've lost perspective, that we're too emotionally involved to make rational decisions about the company." His jaw clenched. "They're threatening to delay the IPO unless I can prove this marriage is still focused on business objectives." The words hit like a slap. Business objectives. Their words, not mine. "But you're considering it." It wasn't a question. She could see it in his eyes. That flicker of the old Richard, the one who calculated everything. Oh, who put the company first? Kimberly? "No, don't." She stepped back. "Don't you dare go back to treating this like a transaction." "I'm not." "Then what are you doing? What are we doing?" Her voice cracked. "Because 4 days ago, you told me you were falling in love with me. You said you wanted this to be real. And now the board makes one phone call and you're ready to—" "What? Pretend none of it happened? That's not fair, isn't it?" She crossed her arms, suddenly cold despite the warm morning air. "The second things get complicated, the second your precious company is threatened, you shut down. I can see you doing it right now. Pulling away, putting the walls back up." Richard's expression hardened. "You don't understand the pressure I'm under." "Then explain it to me. I'm your wife, Richard. Who actually talk to me instead of making decisions alone and expecting me to just accept them. The company employs 12,000 people. The IPO will determine their futures, their livelihoods. I can't just—" He stopped, visibly struggling. "I can't put my personal feelings above their well-being. No one's asking you to, but you're acting like you have to choose between the company and me, and that's not—" Her breath hitched. "Is that what you think? That loving me means failing them?" "I don't know what I think anymore." His voice was rough, raw. "A month ago, everything was clear. I knew who I was, what I wanted. And then you came into my life and turned everything upside down. And now I can't what? Can't think straight. Can't focus. Or can't be the leader they need me to be because all I want is to stay here with you and forget the rest of the world exists." The confession burst out of him like it had been clawed from somewhere deep. "And that terrifies me." Silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Kimberly felt tears burn her eyes. "So what are you saying? That loving me is a mistake?" "No, God, no." Richard moved toward her, then stopped himself like he'd hit an invisible barrier. "But maybe we moved too fast. Maybe we got caught up in the romance of this place and forgot that we have responsibilities. Obligations. Responsibilities." She laughed, the sound broken. "Is that what I am to you? Another obligation?" "You know that's not what I meant." "Do I?" She wiped at her eyes angrily. "Because right now, when it feels like the second real life intrudes, you're ready to shove me back into the box labeled wife for appearances only." "Kimberly, I can't do this." She turned away, unable to look at him. I can't be with someone who keeps one foot out the door, who loves me right up until it's inconvenient. That's not what I'm doing, isn't it? You're already pulling away. I can feel it. She hugged herself tighter. And the worst part is, I understand why. Your company is important. Those people depend on you. But I need to know, am I important too? Do I matter as much as the board's approval and the stock price and whatever the hell else you're worried about? Richard was quiet for so long, she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to balance it. The company and you. Eat work in this. I've spent my entire adult life knowing exactly what to prioritize, and now He stopped. I'm drowning, and I don't know how to ask for help. Kimberly turned back to him, and her heart broke at the vulnerability in his face. He looked lost, scared, like the armor had finally cracked all the way through. Then let me help, she said softly. Let me in, all the way. Stop trying to protect me or shield me or make decisions for both of us. We're supposed to be partners. I know. Do you? Because partners communicate. Partners trust each other. They don't shut down the second things get hard. I'm not. He stopped, took a breath. You're right. I am shutting down. It's what I do. What I've always done. Then unlearn it. She stepped closer. I'm not asking you to choose between me and your company. I'm asking you to stop treating them as mutually exclusive, to trust that we can figure this out together. Richard reached for her hand, hesitant. What if I fail? At the company, at this, at being who you need me to be? Then you fail. We both might. But at least we'll fail together instead of you failing alone while pushing me away. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I got scared and I defaulted to old patterns and I know. She held him just as tightly. But you can't do that. Not if we're going to make this work. I need to know you're all in. That when things get hard, you'll talk to me instead of retreating into yourself. I'll try. I swear I'll try. They stood like that for a long time, clinging to each other as the sun climbed higher. But something had shifted. Some hairline fracture had appeared in the foundation they'd been building, and Kimberly couldn't shake the feeling that it was only a matter of time before it spread. The next 2 days were strained. They went through the motions, swimming, eating, exploring. But the ease was gone. Every conversation felt weighted. Every silence felt loaded with things they weren't saying. Richard was on his phone more, taking calls from the board, from his lawyers, from Daniel. Each conversation left him tenser, more withdrawn, and Kimberly felt herself pulling back too, protecting herself from the inevitable hurt. Because she could see where this was heading, back to New York, back to reality, back to Richard choosing his company over her. Not because he didn't love her, but because he didn't know how to do both. Beyond their second to last night, they had dinner on the terrace in near silence. Finally, Richard set down his wine glass. We need to talk about what happens when we go back. Kimberly's stomach nodded. Okay. The board wants to meet with both of us. They want assurance that the marriage is still serving its purpose. Its purpose? She set down her own glass carefully. You mean convincing them you're a stable family man instead of a ruthless corporate shark? Don't. Don't what? State the obvious? She met his eyes. That's what this was always about, right? Optics, PR, making you more palatable to investors. It was about that, in the beginning. He leaned forward. But it's not anymore, you know that. Do I? She hated the bitterness in her voice, but couldn't stop it. Because the last few days, it feels like we're right back where we started. You making executive decisions. Me expected to just smile and go along with it. That's not fair, isn't it? Have you asked me what I want? What I think we should do? Richard opened his mouth, then closed it. No. Exactly. Kimberly stood, needing distance. She walked to the terrace edge, looking out at the dark sea. I love you, Richard. I really do. But I'm starting to think that's not enough. She heard his chair scrape back, felt him come up behind her, but he didn't touch her. What are you saying? His voice was tight. I'm saying that love without trust is just pain waiting to happen. And I don't know if I trust you not to choose the company over us when it really matters. Kimberly, you've already done it once, this week, where the board called and you immediately started pulling away, protecting yourself, treating me like a problem to manage instead of your partner. I was scared. So was I. She whirled to face him. I'm terrified, Richard. I'm in love with a man who spent 32 years building walls around his heart, and I don't know if a few weeks of happiness is enough to break them down. I don't know if I'm strong enough to keep fighting for someone who might just retreat back behind them the second things get difficult. Richard's face went pale. Is that what you think of me? That I'm going to give up on us? I think you're going to try your best not to. But I also think that when push comes to shove, when the board demands you choose, you're going to pick the safe option, the familiar one. Her voice broke. And I can't be the person who gets left behind because I wasn't worth the risk. You are worth it. You're worth everything. Then prove it. The words came out as a challenge. When we get back to New York, when the board tries to control our relationship, stand up to them. Choose us. Choose me. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. Tears streamed down her face now. Either you want this marriage to be real, or you don't. Either I'm your wife and your partner, or I'm a convenient prop in your corporate theater. You don't get to have it both ways. Richard looked stricken. You're asking me to potentially destroy everything I've built. I'm asking you to decide what you're actually building toward. She wiped her eyes. A company or a life? He didn't answer, couldn't answer. And in that silence, Kimberly felt something inside her break. I think, she said quietly, we need some space. When we get back to New York, maybe I should stay at my parents' house for a while. Give us both time to think about what we really want. No, Richard's voice was hoarse. Don't do this. I have to, because right now I'm in too deep and you're still standing on the shore trying to decide if the water's safe, and I can't keep drowning while you make up your mind. Kimberly, please. I love you. She said it like a goodbye. But I love myself too, and I deserve someone who's sure about me, who doesn't treat loving me like a liability. She walked past him, back into the villa, and closed the bedroom door. Richard didn't follow. Their last day in Santorini was a funeral for what might have been. They packed in silence, avoided eye contact, moved around each other like strangers. The flight back was worse. Kimberly sat by the window pretending to sleep while tears leaked from her closed eyes. Richard sat across from her, staring at nothing, his jaw tight. When they landed in New York, the car was waiting. I'll have your things sent to your parents' house, Richard said stiffly. Thank you. Kimberly, please don't. She couldn't look at him. If she looked at him, she'd break. I need to do this. For both of us. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I'm sorry. For all of it. Me too. She got out of the car without looking back. That night, alone in her childhood bedroom, Kimberly cried until she had nothing left. Her phone sat silent on the nightstand. No calls, no texts, nothing from Richard. And somehow that hurt most of all. Because she'd given him a chance to fight for her, and he'd let her walk away. She'd been right. When it came down to it, she wasn't worth the risk. The thought made her feel hollow, empty, like someone had scooped out everything vital and left just a shell behind. She'd fallen in love with Richard Ashford, and he'd broken her heart without even trying. Kimberly spent 3 days in her childhood bedroom, staring at the ceiling and trying to convince herself she'd made the right choice. She hadn't. The realization came slowly, like dawn breaking. First just a whisper of doubt, then growing louder until it was all she could hear. I made a mistake. Her mother brought tea she didn't drink. Her father knocked softly and asked if she wanted to talk. Mira called 17 times before Kimberly finally answered. You left him, Mira said without preamble. I know. In Greece. I'm aware. Kim. Mira's voice softened. What happened? Kimberly closed her eyes, seeing Richard's face as she'd walked away, devastated and trying so hard not to show it. I got scared. Of what? Of wanting something I was never supposed to have. Her throat tightened. This whole thing was supposed to be temporary, a business arrangement, and then he went and... She stopped, the words catching. When and what? Made me fall in love with him. Silence on the other end. Then, oh, honey. I know. Kimberly pressed her palm against her eyes. I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're terrified. Mira paused. But here's the question. Are you more scared of loving him or losing him? Kimberly didn't have an answer. Day 4, her father found her in the garden. He sat beside her on the bench where she used to read as a child, quiet for a long moment. They'd barely spoken since she'd come home. She knew he felt guilty, that he blamed himself for the marriage, for putting her in this position. I never thanked you, he said finally, for what you did, marrying him to save the company. Dad, let me finish. He turned to look at her, and she saw tears in his eyes. I was so focused on not losing everything, I didn't think about what I was asking you to give up. Your freedom, your choice, the chance to marry someone you actually loved. It's not your fault. It is. And I'm sorry. He took her hand. But Kim, I've seen the photos from Greece. I've seen the way he looks at you, the way you look at him. That doesn't mean... It means everything. Her father squeezed her fingers. When your mother and I got married, it was arranged too. Did I ever tell you that? Kimberly blinked. What? Our families were business partners. They thought a marriage would solidify the alliance. We barely knew each other. He smiled softly. I thought I'd spend my whole life in a loveless arrangement, but then I actually got to know her, and I fell so hard, so completely, that I couldn't imagine my life without her. That's different, is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly the same. He tilted his head. The question isn't whether you love him, sweetheart. I think we both know you do. The question is what you're going to do about it. Day 5, Kimberly went for a walk. She ended up at the park near her old apartment, the one where she used to sit and write grant proposals on her laptop. A lifetime ago, I think it seemed, before Richard, before everything changed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel Chen. He's a mess, just FYI. Her heart clenched. She typed back, is he okay? Daniel. Define okay. He's working 20-hour days, snapping at everyone, and I'm pretty sure he's sleeping in his office. So no, not okay. Kimberly stared at her phone, guilt churning in her stomach. Another text from Daniel. He won't admit it, but he's in love with you. Has been for a while, I think. Probably since you threw croissant crumbs at him that first morning. Her breath caught. I didn't throw crumbs at him, Daniel. Whatever. Point is, he's miserable without you, and I'm guessing you're pretty miserable without him, too. She couldn't deny it. Daniel, so maybe stop being stubborn and go talk to him? I'll even tell you where he is. Hey, Kimberly's fingers hovered over the keyboard. Where? Daniel. The penthouse. Where else? Guy literally has nowhere else to go. Also, for what it's worth, I've never seen him let anyone in the way he let you in. Don't waste that. Day 6, Kimberly made a decision. She stood outside the penthouse building, heart hammering, second-guessing everything. What if he didn't want to see her? What if he'd moved on? What if she'd broken something that couldn't be fixed? But then she thought about waking up in his arms, dancing in the kitchen, swimming at sunset. The way he looked at her like she was the only real thing in his carefully constructed world. And she thought, I have to try. The doorman recognized her immediately. Mrs. Ashford, welcome back. Mrs. Ashford, the name still fit strange, but for the first time, she didn't want to correct him. She took the elevator up, each floor making her more nervous. When the doors opened to the penthouse, she stepped out on shaking legs. The apartment was dark except for the light coming from Richard's office. Kimberly walked slowly down the hall, and through the open door, she saw him. Sitting at his desk, still in yesterday's clothes, running his hands through his hair in that gesture she'd come to recognize as distress. Papers scattered everywhere, coffee cups multiplying. He looked exhausted, wrecked, lost. Her heart broke, and mended and broke again. Richard, she said softly. He looked up so fast he nearly knocked over his coffee. For a moment he just stared at her, like she might be a hallucination. Then he stood slowly, carefully, like she might disappear if he moved too fast. Kimberly, his voice was hoarse. Corey, what are you doing here? I came to... She stopped, all her prepared speeches evaporating. I came because I was wrong. Wrong about what? About leaving. About running away. She stepped into the office, closer. About thinking this was just an arrangement that got out of hand. Richard's jaw tightened. What are you saying? I'm saying I was scared. Terrified, actually. Because somewhere between hating this marriage and tolerating you and actually getting to know you, I fell in love with you. The words tumbled out, messy and true. And that wasn't part of the plan. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it did. And instead of being brave enough to admit it, I ran. He stood frozen, and she couldn't read his expression. And I know I hurt you, Kimberly continued, her voice breaking. I know I left when things got real, and that's not fair, and you have every right to tell me to leave. But I needed you to know that I want this. Not the arrangement, not the deal. You. I want you. Silence stretched between them, heavy and terrifying. Then Richard moved. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, crushing her against his chest, his face buried in her hair, his whole body shaking. I thought I lost you, he said roughly. I thought I'd finally found something real, and I lost it. You didn't lose me. Kimberly pulled back just enough to see his face, and her heart stuttered at the raw emotion there. I'm right here. If you still want me. If I... He laughed, the sound broken and relieved. Kimberly, I've wanted you since the moment you yelled at me in that bathroom on our wedding day. I've wanted you every single day since, even when you were infuriating, especially when you were infuriating. I'm very infuriating, the most infuriating person I've ever met. And you love me anyway? Richard's thumb traced her cheekbone, and the tenderness in the gesture made her eyes sting. I love you because of it, because you challenge me and call me out and make me want to be better, because you saw past the money and the power and the reputation, and you saw me, just me. Just you is pretty great, Kimberly whispered. Just you is everything. He kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise, and Kimberly kissed him back, pouring everything she felt into it. All the fear and hope and love she'd been too scared to name. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Richard pressed his forehead against hers. Don't run again, he said quietly. And whatever happens, whatever gets scary, talk to me, yell at me, throw things at me if you need to. But don't run. I won't, I promise. She cupped his face. I'm all in, Richard, for real this time. No more half measures or safety nets. Just us. Just us, he repeated and smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed his whole face. I can work with that. Yeah? Yeah. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tip of her nose. I love you, Kimberly Ashford. I love you too. She grinned against his mouth. Even though you're a terrible cook, you're worse. I burned water once. How is that even possible? I'm gifted. Richard laughed, pulling her closer, and Kimberly thought, this, this is what home feels like. Not the penthouse, not the arrangement or the deal or any of it. Just him, just them, just this. 3 months later, and Kimberly woke to the smell of burning toast and smiled before she even opened her eyes. She found Richard in the kitchen, wearing nothing but pajama pants and a look of intense concentration as he scraped blackened bread over the sink. His hair was rumpled from sleep, and there was a smudge of what looked like jam on his shoulder. Morning, she said, leaning against the doorway. He looked up, sheepish. I was trying to make you breakfast in bed, and instead you made charcoal. In my defense, the toaster is defective. The toaster is fine. You're just impatient. She crossed the kitchen and wrapped her arms around him from behind, pressing her cheek against his bare back. But it's the thought that counts. Richard turned in her arms, pulling her close. One happy 3-month anniversary of you coming back and saving me from my own stupidity. That's not a real anniversary. It is to me. He kissed her forehead. Every day with you is worth celebrating. Even the days I'm infuriating. Especially those days. Kimberly laughed and stretched up to kiss him properly. It was easy now, this casual intimacy. The way they moved around each other, learned each other's rhythms, built a life that was theirs. The penthouse had slowly transformed. Her books now filled the shelves, organized by color, because Richard had given up arguing about it. Her coffee mugs cluttered the counter. Photos from Greece hung in the hallway alongside new ones. Them at a charity gala, laughing over dinner with Daniel and Mira, walking through Central Park on a Sunday morning. It looked lived in now, loved. I have something for you, Richard said, pulling back. If it's more burnt toast, it's not burnt toast. He disappeared into his office and returned holding a folder. Open it. Kimberly took it, curious. Inside was a legal document, dense paragraphs of legalese that made her eyes cross. But as she skimmed, certain phrases jumped out. Dissolution of previous marital agreement, no financial obligations, parties free to proceed on basis of mutual affection. What is this? She asked, looking up. It's our original marriage contract, voided. Richard's gray eyes were steady on hers. I spoke with my lawyers last week. The arrangement is dissolved. Your father's company is secure regardless. I had the merger restructured, and you're free. Kimberly's heart stuttered. Free? To leave if you want. To stay if you want. Well, but I needed you to know that you're not trapped anymore. You never have to question whether you're here because of a deal or because you want to be. He took her hands. I want you to choose me, Kimberly. Not because you have to, because you want to. Tears pricked her eyes. You dissolved our marriage contract. Technically, we'd have to get remarried if you wanted to stay married, legally speaking. And if I do want that? Richard's breath caught. Do you? Instead of answering, Kimberly set the folder aside and pulled him down for a kiss that said everything she couldn't put into words. When they broke apart, both smiling, she whispered, Yes. Yes? Yes, I want to stay married. Yes, I choose you. Yes to all of it. She laughed, giddy. Although maybe this time we could have a wedding that we actually want. What did you have in mind? Something small? Just us and the people we love. Maybe back in Santorini? She bit her lip. I know it's silly, but it's perfect. Richard cupped her face. You're perfect. And I would marry you 100 times if it meant I got to keep you. Just 100? 1,000? 1,000,000? However many you want. Kimberly's heart felt so full it might burst. I love you. I love you too. He kissed her again, soft and sweet. More than I thought I could love anything. 6 months later, they stood on a terrace in Santorini. The guest list was small. Daniel, who served as best man and wouldn't stop grinning. Mira, who cried through the entire ceremony. Kimberly's parents. A handful of close friends. No press, no board members. No one who didn't genuinely care about them. Kimberly wore a simple white dress, nothing like the elaborate gown from the first wedding. This one was light and flowing, with thin straps and lace that caught the sunlight. Her hair was loose, flowers tucked behind her ear. Richard wore a crisp white shirt and light gray pants. No jacket. He looked relaxed in a way he never had at their first wedding. Happy, real. When it came time for vows, there was no script, no publicist-approved statements, just truth. Kimberly, Richard began, his voice rough with emotion. 6 months ago, I married you because I was lonely and desperate and thought a wife would fix something broken in me. I was wrong. You didn't fix me. You challenged me to fix myself. You saw past the money and the power and all the armor I'd built up. And you loved me anyway. He took her hands and she saw tears in his eyes. You make me want to be better, softer, more human. You taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness. It's the bravest thing we can do. And I promise to spend the rest of my life being brave enough to love you the way you deserve, to show up, to be present, to choose you every single day, not because I have to, but because I can't imagine choosing anything else. Kimberly's vision blurred. She squeezed his hands and took a shaky breath. Richard, when we first met, I thought you were arrogant and cold and completely impossible. Soft laughter rippled through the small gathering. And you were, but you were also lonely and scared and trying so hard to be perfect that you forgot how to be real. She smiled through her tears. You gave me a choice when you didn't have to. You let me go when it would have been easier to hold on. And in doing that, you showed me who you really are. Someone who values my happiness over his own. Someone who's willing to be uncomfortable if it means I'm free. Someone worth choosing. She reached up to brush away a tear from his cheek. So I choose you, today and every day after. I choose your terrible cooking and your workaholic tendencies and the way you organize everything by spreadsheet. I choose the man who sleeps with his arm around me every night, who laughs at my bad jokes, who makes me feel seen and loved and safe. I choose us. Richard's smile was radiant. Us. Always us. The officiant, a local priest who barely spoke English but understood love in any language, pronounced them married. And Richard pulled Kimberly into a kiss that felt like a promise, a celebration, a beginning. Their friends cheered. The sun set over the caldera in shades of gold and pink. And Kimberly thought, this is what happiness feels like. That night they had dinner on the villa terrace, the same villa where they'd first fallen in love, though everything felt different now. Lighter, easier, like they'd finally figured out how to be themselves together. So, Richard said, pouring them both wine. Mrs. Ashford, Mr. Ashford, how does it feel? Being married for real this time? Kimberly pretended to think about it. Pretty much the same, honestly. You're still terrible at cooking. You're still worse. True, she grinned. But now when we order takeout, it feels romantic instead of sad. That's the power of love. It makes everything better. Even your burnt toast? Especially my burnt toast. They ate and talked and watched the stars come out over the sea. At some point, Richard pulled her into his lap, and she went willingly, curling against his chest. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For giving me a second chance. For seeing something in me worth loving. He pressed a kiss to her temple. For choosing me. Thank you for being worth choosing. She tilted her head back to look at him. And for giving me the freedom to choose. Always. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped up in each other, listening to the sound of the waves and the distant music from the village below. Eventually, Richard said, I have one more surprise. Richard, you've given me enough. Just one more, I promise. He pulled an envelope from his pocket. Ani opened it. Inside was a check, a very large check, made out to her name. What is this? Kimberly asked. Your trust fund. Well, not technically a trust fund, but I set aside a portion of my assets in your name, completely independent from me, so you never have to worry about money or depend on me financially or feel trapped. He met her eyes. I want you to have your own security, your own power. Kimberly stared at the check, overwhelmed. This is, Richard, this is millions of dollars. I know. I can't accept this. You can, and you will. He cupped her face. Because I need you to know that you're with me because you want to be, not because you need to be. And if someday you wake up and decide you don't want this anymore, you have the means to leave. You're never stuck. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm not going anywhere. I know, but I needed you to have the choice. She kissed him then, deep and grateful and full of love. When they broke apart, she whispered, how did I get so lucky? I ask myself the same thing every day. 1 year later, Kimberly stood in the penthouse bathroom, staring at the positive pregnancy test in her shaking hands. She'd suspected for a week the nausea, the exhaustion, the way coffee suddenly smelled wrong. But seeing the confirmation was different. Real. She was pregnant. They were going to have a baby. The bathroom door opened and Richard appeared, all ready in his suit for work. Hey, did you see my... He stopped, seeing her face. What's wrong? Kimberly couldn't speak. She just held up the test. Richard stared at it for a long moment. Then his face transformed, shock giving way to joy so pure it took her breath away. We're having a baby? His voice cracked. We're having a baby. He crossed the bathroom in 2 strides and picked her up, spinning her around, laughing and crying at the same time. When he set her down, he kept his hands on her face, his forehead pressed to hers. I love you, he said fiercely. I love you so much. I love you too. We're going to be parents. Terrifying, right? Absolutely terrifying. He grinned. And perfect. 8 months later, at 2:47 in the morning, Eleanor Grace Ashford was born. She had Richard's gray eyes and Kimberly's nose, and a cry that could wake the entire maternity ward. She was perfect. Richard held her like she was made of glass, tears streaming down his face as he stared at his daughter in wonder. Hi, Ellie, he whispered. I'm your dad. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I promise I'm going to love you with everything I have, just like I love your mom. Kimberly watched from the hospital bed, exhausted and happy, and so in love with both of them, it hurt. Wait, you're going to be an amazing father, she said. Richard looked up, and the love in his eyes was overwhelming. Only because I have an amazing partner. He sat beside her on the bed, careful of the baby, and they stayed like that, the 3 of them, their little family, as the sun rose over the city 5 years later. Kimberly stood in the kitchen of their new house in Connecticut. They'd moved out of the penthouse when Ellie turned 2, and Richard had finally admitted he hated city living. Watching her husband chase their daughter through the backyard, Ellie shrieked with laughter, her dark curls bouncing as Richard caught her and lifted her onto his shoulders. He'd taken the afternoon off work. Actually off, no laptop, no phone calls. Just time with his family. He'd changed so much from the man she'd married in that cold, loveless ceremony 6 years ago. He laughed more, worked less, let himself be imperfect, and he loved fiercely openly, without reservation. The back door opened, and Richard came in with Ellie, both of them grass-stained and grinning. "Mommy, Daddy threw me in the air." "I saw. Very impressive." Kimberly kissed her daughter's forehead, then her husband's mouth. "Dinner in 10 minutes. "What are we having?" Richard asked. "Takeout. I tried to cook and nearly burned down the kitchen." "My talented wife." "Your disaster of a wife." "My perfect wife," he corrected, pulling her close with his free arm, Ellie giggling between them. "My everything." Kimberly looked at her family, this messy, beautiful, unexpected family, and felt a wave of gratitude so strong it nearly knocked her over. She'd been forced into a marriage she didn't want with a man she didn't choose, and somehow, impossibly, it had given her everything she'd ever needed. Love, partnership, home. "I love you," she said, looking up at Richard. "I love you too." He kissed her softly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a chance. For choosing me. For this." He gestured at their life. The house, their daughter, the burnt dinner. All of it. "For everything." Kimberly smiled, her heart full. "Best decision I ever made. Even better than leaving me in Greece. Especially better than that." "Good," Richard grinned, "because I'm never letting you go again." "Promise?" "Promise." And he kept that promise. Every single day for the rest of their lives. Dear viewers, what started as an arrangement became a love story. What began with resistance became surrender. And what seemed like a trap became the greatest freedom either of them had ever known. Sometimes the best love stories are the ones we never saw coming. Drop your thoughts about the story in the comments section. Subscribe and stay tuned. More lovely stories coming your way from this channel. The end.